Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we've got a really cool one lined up. We're going to be talking about the moon,
Oh, yeah.
using this awesome collection of articles you put together focusing on new discoveries,
Yeah.
especially from the change missions, and kind of looking ahead to what we can expect from the Artemis III launch.
Absolutely. Yeah. These missions are really, they're giving us this whole new perspective on the moon's history. We used to think of it as just this cold and dead rock.
Right, yeah.
But now it's like, whoa, hold on. There might have been volcanic activity much later than we ever thought.
Volcanoes on the moon. Well, I'm really interested. I thought all that stuff stopped billions of years ago.
Yeah, that's what most people thought. But the evidence is pointing to something way more dynamic.
Okay.
And this is huge for things like water ice and other resources.
I've seen those articles about water ice. That's fascinating. But before we jump into that, let's go back to the basics. I mean, everyone knows the moons are a little buddy in space, but how did they even get together in the first place?
Well, the most popular theory is the giant impact hypothesis. Imagine this. Billions of years ago, something the size of Mars.
Whoa.
It was even nicknamed Theia. This thing slams into the early Earth.
That must have been one heck of a collision. What happened after that?
Well, debris from this massive impact gets thrown into orbit around Earth and over a really, really long time.
Okay.
Gravity pulls all this debris together and boom, you've got the moon. And the cool part is when we look at moon rocks,
Right.
they're chemically similar to Earth rocks,
Interesting.
which really supports that impact theory.
It's like a cosmic fingerprint, huh? Showing they have a history together?
Yeah, exactly. But of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing after that.
Right, I bet.
So picture the early moon. It's basically this molten inferno, like a global magma ocean. And this thing is slowly cooling and crystallizing. It took hundreds of millions of years.
Hundreds of millions of years. So a molten ocean slowly cooling and hardening. I guess the heavier stuff would sink to the bottom to make the mantle, right?
Exactly. And the lighter stuff rose to the top.
Yeah.
And as it kept cooling, a crust formed. Then over time, you had these giant impacts,
Okay.
creating the craters we see today. And some of those craters filled with lava, making those dark, smooth plains we call Maria.
Oh, the Maria. Those are what make the man in the moon we see from Earth, right?
Right on. So impact events shape the lunar surface. But there's also been a lot of talk about this period of intense asteroid bombardment. We call it the late heavy bombardment.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. Didn't scientists originally think it was just this short, crazy burst of asteroid impacts all at once?
Yeah, that was the initial idea based on samples from the Apollo missions, but newer research is suggesting it was way longer,
Interesting.
like hundreds of millions of years.
So the moon's early life was even crazier than we thought. But wait, you mentioned volcanoes earlier. I thought we were talking ancient history here.
We were, but here's where things get really interesting. For the longest time, we thought the moon was geologically dead,
Right.
But these change missions, they're turning that idea on its head.
Is this what led to those water ice discoveries everyone's buzzing about?
Well, water ice is a different discovery, although they're connected.
Okay,
But let's stick with the volcanoes for now.
gotcha.
So Chang'e 5 landed in this area called Oceanus Procellarum. And get this, it brought back volcanic rocks that are only about 2 billion years old,
Right.
which is young in geological terms.
So there was relatively recent volcanic activity on the moon. What's that mean for our understanding of it?
Well, it could mean that the moon's interior is hotter than we thought, and that volcanic activity might have gone on for much longer than we thought possible. It brings up a lot of questions about how the moon's insides work and how it's evolved.
Wait, are we talking like active volcanoes right now? Like if we had a super powerful telescope, could we see an eruption happening?
Well, that would be amazing to see, but probably not.
Yeah.
But the evidence from Chang'e 5, especially these volcanic glass beads, dated to only like 120 million years ago,
Wow.
suggests that volcanoes on the moon might not be a thing of the past.
That totally changes things. We'll definitely have to dig into those glass beads and what they mean later. But speaking of surprises, what about the far side of the moon? I've always been fascinated by it.
The far side is a mystery, for sure.
Yeah.
It's totally different from the side we see. Thicker crust, not as many Maria, and it's way more rugged.
It's like the moon has a secret side. What could explain why the two sides are so different?
One big theory is all about how the moon formed and how it cooled down. Remember that giant impact we talked about?
Yeah.
The crazy heat from that might have made the near side, the one facing Earth,
Okay.
cool down slower. And that slower cooling could have led to more volcanic activity on that side, which formed the Maria.
So the near side had a nice, slow, volcanic cool-down party while the far side was left out in the cold?
Pretty much. The far side probably cooled way faster, leading to the thicker crust and less volcanic activity. But to really get what's going on over there,
Yeah.
we need more data.
And I read that we're actually getting some of that data from China's Change 4 mission, the one that landed on the far side.
Oh, yeah.
What have we learned from that historic mission?
Well, Change of 4 landed in the South Pole Aitken Basin,
Wow.
the biggest impact crater in the whole solar system. This massive basin is like a window into the moon's early days.
So Change of 4 is a time traveler digging up clues about the moon's past.
Exactly. It's helping us understand how the moon evolved and what the early solar system was like.
That's amazing. We've covered so much already, from the moon's fiery birth to the possibility of recent volcanoes and the secrets of the far side. But there's one more thing I'm super curious about. The resources the moon might be holding?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge topic. It could have implications for future lunar missions and even life here on Earth. And there's one resource that's really caught people's attention: helium-3.
Helium-3. Okay, I've seen that pop up in articles about fusion energy. What's the connection?
Well, helium-3 is super rare on Earth, but it's scarred to be plentiful on the moon.
Hmm.
The solar wind has been depositing it there for billions of years, and here's why it's so cool. Helium-3 could be the fuel source for nuclear fusion reactors.
So you're saying we could solve our energy problems with something from the moon. Now that's mind-blowing.
Imagine powering the whole planet with clean energy from the moon. Fusion is what powers the sun.
Right?
And helium-3 could give us a practically limitless source of clean energy.
Wow.
No more fossil fuels, no more pollution, no more energy crises.
A clean energy future powered by the moon? That's an amazing thought. But I bet there are some hurdles to jump over before we can get this helium-3 back to Earth.
Oh, absolutely. Mining helium-3 on the moon would be a huge project. We're talking about inventing new extraction technologies,
Yeah.
building processing facilities on the moon, and figuring out how to safely bring tons of this stuff back to Earth. It's a massive task, and it won't happen overnight.
Yeah, it sounds like a long-term goal, but it's still exciting to imagine the possibilities. Speaking of the future, let's talk about the Artemis III mission. This one's generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
And for good reason. It's the first crewed mission back to the moon's surface since the Apollo era.
It's a huge moment for space exploration. Artemis III is the start of something new, a new era where humans could actually live on the moon for good.
That sounds incredible. It's like something straight out of science fiction.
It does sound futuristic, doesn't it? But NASA is serious about making it happen.
And one of the big parts of this plan is the Artemis Base Camp, right? This idea of building a permanent home on the moon.
Exactly. The Artemis Base Camp is supposed to be this long-term research station, like a central hub for scientific discovery. And it'll be a testing ground for technologies that could take us to Mars and even farther someday.
So we're talking about a lunar outpost, a stepping stone to exploring deeper into space. I'm picturing something like a research station in Antarctica, but on the moon.
That's a good way to think about it.
Cool.
The base camp will probably be built near the moon's south pole.
Okay.
That area is especially interesting because it might have water ice and other valuable resources.
Right, we talked about water ice earlier. It seems to be a big deal in lunar exploration. But why the South Pole specifically? What's so special about it?
Well, the South Pole has these spots that are always in shadow, so they never get direct sunlight.
Wow.
These spots become like super cold traps where water ice, delivered by comets or other things, can build up and stay frozen for billions of years.
It's like a giant cosmic freezer, keeping that precious water ice safe. But back to the base camp, how are they going to build something that complex in such a harsh environment?
That's where things get super innovative. NASA's looking into different building techniques,
Cool.
including 3D printing using lunar regolith.
Okay.
That's the loose stuff that covers the moon's surface.
Wait, they're going to 3D print buildings out of moon dust? That's wild.
It is. 3D printing could revolutionize how we build things on the moon.
Right?
It means we can use what's already there so we don't have to ship tons of building materials from Earth. That saves money and makes living on the moon more sustainable.
So it's like building a sandcastle, but way more advanced and on a massive scale.
You got it. They're also considering using robots and AI to help with the construction.
Oh, wow.
That'll make it safer and less challenging for the human crews.
It's a perfect mix of human creativity and cutting-edge technology. It's amazing to see how far we've come in space exploration. But while we're on the topic of lunar resources, we've talked a lot about helium-3. Are there any other resources on the moon that people are excited about?
Oh, definitely. Besides water ice and helium-3, the moon might have a lot of rare earth elements.
Okay.
Those are crucial for all sorts of technology here on Earth. Smartphones, electric vehicles, you name it.
Right. I remember reading about those. They're super important for our tech, but there are concerns about the environmental impact of mining them here on Earth.
Yeah.
Could the moon be a more sustainable option?
That's one possibility people are looking into. Mining rare earth elements on the moon could help with those environmental worries.
That makes sense.
And it would mean we wouldn't have to rely so much on Earth's limited supply.
So lunar mining could be a win-win for space exploration and for life here on Earth. But I'm sure there are a lot of challenges to overcome before we start seeing lunar mines popping up everywhere.
For sure. Lunar mining, like any big project like that, comes with big technical and logistical issues.
Right.
We've got to develop efficient ways to extract and process the resources and a safe, reliable way to transport them back to Earth.
And we can't forget the ethical and legal questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who owns the resources on the moon? How do we make sure any mining is done responsibly and sustainably? Those are big questions we need to answer as we continue exploring the moon.
You're absolutely right. As we venture further into space, we've got to do it ethically and responsibly.
I agree.
The moon belongs to all of humanity, so anything we do there should benefit everyone.
Well said. It's a reminder that space exploration isn't just about the technology. It's also about understanding ourselves and where we fit in this vast universe.
Exactly. As we explore the moon and beyond, we're not just finding new worlds. We're discovering new things about ourselves, our values, and our responsibilities as caretakers of the cosmos.
So we were just talking about Artemis III and the goal of actually having humans live on the moon. I gotta say that sounds pretty sci-fi to me.
It does kind of have that futuristic feel to it.
Right.
But NASA seems pretty serious about actually doing it.
And a big part of that plan is the Artemis Base Camp, right?
Yeah.
Building a permanent habitat on the moon.
That's right. They're imagining the Artemis Base Camp as this long-term research station, a hub for all kinds of science,
Okay.
and a place to test technologies we might use for missions to Mars and even beyond.
So like a lunar outpost, a starting point for exploring deeper into space.
Exactly.
It's like a research station in Antarctica, but on the moon.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. They'll probably build it near the moon's south pole,
Okay.
which is really interesting because it might have water ice and important resources.
Right. We talked about water ice earlier. It keeps coming up when we talk about exploring the moon. But why the South Pole specifically? What makes it so special?
Well, the South Pole has areas that are always in shadow. They never see the sun, so they become these ultra-cold traps. And any water ice that gets there from comets or whatever,
Yeah.
it could just stay frozen there for billions of years.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like a giant cosmic freezer preserving this precious water ice. But going back to the base camp, how are they going to actually build something that complex in such a harsh environment?
Well, that's where things get really innovative. NASA's looking at some really cool building techniques.
Oh, cool. Like what?
They're considering using 3D printing with lunar regolith.
Okay, what's that?
It's basically the loose material that covers the moon's surface, moon dust.
Wait, so they're going to 3D print buildings out of moon dust?
Yep,
That's incredible.
it is. 3D printing could be a total game changer for how we build on the moon.
Right.
It means we can use stuff that's already there.
Yeah,
We don't have to haul tons of building materials from Earth,
that makes sense.
which saves a ton of money, and it makes living on the moon more sustainable.
So it's like building a sandcastle, but with way more advanced tech and on a much bigger scale.
Exactly. And they're also thinking about using robots and AI to help with the construction,
Wow, that's amazing.
which makes things safer and less difficult for the human crews.
It's such a cool combination of human ingenuity and high tech. It's incredible to see how far we've come with space exploration. But speaking of lunar resources, we've spent a lot of time on helium-3. Are there any other resources on the moon that have people excited?
Oh yeah, there are definitely a few others. Aside from water ice and helium-3, the moon might have a good amount of rare earth elements.
Okay.
Those are really important for lots of different technologies here on Earth. Smartphones, electric cars, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I remember reading about rare earth elements. They're super important for our tech, but I also remember there were some concerns about mining them here on Earth,
Yeah,
like the environmental impact.
exactly.
Could the moon offer a more sustainable way to get those resources?
That's one of the possibilities scientists are exploring. Mining those elements on the moon could maybe help with some of the environmental problems we have with mining on Earth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it could help us not be so dependent on the limited supply we have here.
So mining on the moon could be good for space exploration and good for life back here on Earth, but I'm sure there are a lot of obstacles to figure out before we see lunar mines popping up everywhere.
Oh, definitely. Mining on the moon, just like any huge project like that,
Yeah,
it's going to have some major technical and logistical challenges.
right.
We have to develop super efficient ways to extract and process those resources and find a safe and reliable way to transport them back to Earth.
Right, and we can't forget about the ethical and legal issues that come along with all of that.
Exactly. Those are crucial.
Who owns the resources on the moon? How do we make sure any mining is done in a way that's sustainable and doesn't harm the environment? Those are big questions we need to answer as we keep exploring the moon.
Absolutely. As we go further into space,
Yeah,
we have to do it the right way. Ethically and responsibly.
I agree.
The moon belongs to all of humanity.
Right.
So anything we do there should benefit everyone.
That's a great point. It's a good reminder that space exploration isn't just about pushing the limits of technology.
Right.
It's also about understanding ourselves and our place in this giant universe.
Exactly. As we explore the moon and beyond, we're not just discovering new worlds.
Yeah.
We're also discovering new things about ourselves, our values, and our responsibilities for taking care of the cosmos.
We've been talking about all these amazing things happening in lunar exploration, from those potential resources to the Artemis base camp. It really feels like we're about to see a whole new era of humans on the moon. But it makes me wonder about the bigger picture. What does all of this mean for humanity, like philosophically?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah,
As we venture further into space and maybe even start living on the moon permanently, it really makes us rethink what it means to be human.
right.
Are we Earthlings, stuck here on our home planet? Or are we becoming something more, a multiplanetary species?
It's like we're redefining ourselves as we explore these new frontiers. Does that change how we see our place in the universe?
Oh, definitely. For centuries, humans have looked up at the moon with this sense of wonder and mystery. I mean, it's inspired so many myths, stories, art.
Yeah.
But as we get closer to the moon, as we actually start living there, how will that change our relationship with it?
I wonder if it'll become just another place to go for science or even tourism.
Right.
Or will it keep that sense of awe and wonder?
I think we can have both. I think the more we learn about the moon, the more we understand its geology, its resources,
Right.
the more we see how complex it is.
Yeah.
And that actually makes it even more wondrous, even as it becomes more familiar.
Like the more we know, the more we realize how much we don't know. And that feeling of discovery, it goes beyond science, right? It leads to some pretty big philosophical questions, too.
Absolutely. Lunar exploration really makes us face some fundamental questions about our existence. Where do we come from? Are we alone in the universe? What are we even doing here?
Whoa, those are some heavy questions.
Yeah, they are.
I'm not sure I have the answers, but it's definitely fascinating to think about them, especially now as we're expanding our presence in space.
I agree. There aren't easy answers to those questions.
Right.
But just asking them, grappling with these existential ideas,
Yeah.
that's valuable. It helps us think bigger and look beyond what's right in front of us.
It's like exploring the moon isn't just an outward journey.
Yeah?
It's an inward journey, too, a journey of self-discovery.
I like that. And who knows, maybe as we explore the moon and go even deeper into space, we'll find evidence of other life out there,
Yeah.
other intelligent beings who have been asking these same questions.
Wow.
Imagine the conversations we could have, the new perspectives we could gain.
That would be incredible, to talk about life, the universe, everything with another intelligent species. But even without meeting any aliens, exploring the moon is already changing how we see Earth, isn't it?
It is. When we see our planet from a distance, this tiny blue sphere hanging in the vastness of space,
Yeah.
it makes you appreciate how beautiful and fragile it is. It reminds us that all life on Earth is connected and that we have to protect our home.
It's a reminder that we're all part of something so much bigger than ourselves, and that we have a responsibility to take care of our planet and each other. That's a pretty powerful message to take away from lunar exploration.
It really is. And that message becomes even more important when we think about the challenges of actually living on the moon. We have to approach this whole thing responsibly,
Yeah.
make sure our actions are sustainable and that we're not harming the lunar environment.
It's like we're learning how to be good citizens of the cosmos as we expand beyond Earth.
Exactly. We're taking what we've learned, the good and the bad,
Right.
and applying it to this new frontier.
It's a chance to write a new chapter in human history, a chapter about cooperation, sustainability, and respecting the universe and all its wonders.
Well said.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about. We've covered so much, from the science of lunar geology and resources to these big philosophical questions about what it means for humans to be in space.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It really has, and it feels like it's just the beginning. As we keep exploring the moon and push further out into the cosmos, who knows what amazing discoveries and insights are waiting for us. The future of space exploration is full of possibilities.
I agree. It is a future full of promise and wonder.
And for our listeners who want to learn more about this fascinating topic, we'll have some great links in our show notes.
Yeah, definitely check those out.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. As you're going about your day, take a look up at the moon, that familiar but still mysterious orb in the sky. Remember, it's not just some object up there. It's a reflection of our own curiosity, our ingenuity, and our drive to explore the unknown.
That's beautiful. And maybe someday some of you listening will get to experience the moon firsthand, walk on its surface and look back at our little blue planet. Until then, keep looking up, keep exploring, and keep asking those big questions.
That's the perfect note to end our lunar deep dive on. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Keep those imaginations soaring.